Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to FIDIC webinar on the committees. This is Dr. Nelson Ogunshakin. I'm the CEO of FIDIC, and I'd like to welcome everybody online. We are really privileged today. I believe that we have in excess of 1,000 people that register, and I will put an apology up front. I think we have capacity of 500 on our system, so we just have to do first come, first serve. The topic is very, very important, is how do we look at improving the capacity of client in emerging countries on FIDIC contract management. It's a webinar organized by our capacity building committee, and really I think it's a real opportunity for us to discuss all the issues that is relevant to that particular issue. So without further ado, I'm just going to go through the first slide, which if Barbara can put that one on. And that will set the scene. Last year, we covered quite a lot in terms of, webinar, and we focused on what was happening in terms of the COVID-19. We did quite a lot along that area. And this year, we are doing 3-in-1, where we are covering the COVID-19. We're doing the State of the World report, which we started last week. And we're also doing committee webinar, which really focus on what our members are doing. In last year, the statistic is there. As far as I can see, we had over 9,000 people that actually attended our webinar, 15,000 registered, and we had 150 countries who participated, with 10,000 subsequently have a look on the YouTube. And that number is actually impressive. I said 10,000, I'm told this morning that number is close to 15,000. So that is pretty impressive. Next slide, please, Barbara. What we see, as I spoke earlier on, this year we're doing 3-in-1. One is to do with the webinar, which is really about committee. We want our committee to be external facing. So a lot of the issues we've been discussing within our committee before are very much within the committee. And this year we're taking it out. We want our committee to be able to share their experience and the issue they're discussing in a wider area so that we can actually have better feedback from the industry. Likewise, we're looking at State of the World report. We published one last week, which is looking at investing trillions of dollars in infrastructure over the next few years so that we can catch up. And also we are dealing with all the issue to do with COVID-19. At this point in time, I need to mention before I introduce our president that this particular webinar is really to do with capacity building. Do we really have the right skill set? Do we really understand the skill set that is required at different phases of project, either at the project development phase, which is really about procurement, project delivery, or when we're trying to close out the project through the dispute resolution process? Those are the topics that we'll be discussing today, and we've got a fantastic panel to help us to do that. Now, at the same time, for those who've been involved with FIDIC, they'll be aware that we've been looking at the credentialing, which is about certification process. And some of the new programs that we're looking at in certification, in addition to adjudication and training, is the issue of possibility of doing FIDIC certifying contract manager. So it's actually quite, absolutely right today that we are discussing this issue because out of this particular meeting, we'll be able to determine whether there is a need for that particular qualification and how best we need to structure it. And if we're going to structure how best we should deliver that globally. So without further ado, I'm going to use this opportunity to invite our President, Bill Howard from the United States, to say a few words about the topic. Bill, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Nelson. And I'd like to thank you and the Secretariat for once again putting on a very interesting and successful webinar. As Nelson said, we've had quite a few over the last year, and we've really managed to reach out to and communicate with thousands of people around the world. So it's been very, very successful in way of an initiative. I'd also like to thank our speakers today for helping us put this interesting webinar on, and particularly I'd like to thank our capacity building committee for developing the program. And finally, all our participants. As Nelson said, we have a lot of people registered for the webinar, and we hope that you'll find it very interesting. The subject, of course, is incredibly important in the high-risk area of infrastructure. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot of thoughts about contract management and risk, et cetera. And as Nelson said, we intend to have, via our certification program, training, to help build capacity in the very, very important area of management of risk and contracts. In my view, at the highest level, the best probability of a successful project is one in which you have highly qualified people serving in their particular roles, utilizing a well-balanced and fair contract. Now, we say by well-balanced and fair, we mean that the risk elements of the contract is properly allocated to the owner, the engineer, and the construction contractor. If you have those two major elements, you have dramatically increased the probability of a successful project. If either one is an issue, the chances of a difficult project are really increased dramatically, and we've seen evidence of that all over the globe. So that's sort of my opening remarks on the subject, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing the views of our panelists. So back to you, Nelson.
Thank you very much, Bill, for your kind introduction. It's really good to have your take on this subject. Without further ado, I'm just going to give highlights. This particular program, I think, is intended to be interactive. So from that point of view, we're going to have a series of questions we want to put across. And the first one is that, do you think the stakeholders who are participating in this FIDIC project are robust enough to deal with potential project risk? So do we think those who are involved with FIDIC project and where FIDIC contract is being used, are they fully versed with knowledge and potential risks that go with that? Time to vote. Do you think so? Yes or no? Now, within a few seconds, I think Barbara will try and show the answer, and then we just get an indication. The answer is 55% say no, and 45% say yes, which is close to 50-50. But actually, that confirmed that there is a lot of room for improvement. On that note, I think that set the scene that there is room for improvement. And just before we go into the main event, and I introduce moderator, because I'm really a facilitator here, I'm told by the team that we had 1,130 people register as at 10:30 this morning from 117 countries. And really bear in mind that we have capacity of 500. Can I apologize for those who are unable to come on board? We'll try and improve our capacity in the near future. But at the same time, going through the list of countries that people register, I understand Philippines has got 94 people registered, USA 69, India 61, Peru 47, UAE 39, and United Kingdom 35, and France 31. On that note, I'm going to introduce you to Stephane Giraud, who is from France, and he's the chair of our capacity building, and he's also a member of the FIDIC Credentialing and Certification Board, which will soon be announced. So Stephane, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nelson and Bill, for this introduction. So I'm Stephane Giraud. I'm a French engineer, and I am an accredited trainer and adjudicator on the president list of FIDIC. So I'm very pleased to be now a moderator for this webinar, because we thought about this webinar 6 months ago by trying to have your opinion, your feedback, and your case study examples from all around the globe regarding this contract management, contract manager. And this is something which might be a very important thing. And FIDIC has decided through FCL, FIDIC Credentialing Limited, a special company who will be able to certify you whenever you want to become a FIDIC certified contract manager, or different things like a future leader, or consulting engineer, or trainer, or adjudicator. But today we'll focus on this contract management topic. So this webinar was organized with Javier from the Capacity Building Committee, and also with a team of speakers. And we prepared the thing according to the topic and according to 3 questions. This webinar was prepared by the Capacity Building Committee, and capacity building is something which may be very theoretical, because capacity building may mean a lot of different things. And particularly, we think that we shall focus on specific items, and the Capacity Building Committee is in charge of thinking about the training strategy, the modules to be trained to attain a certain level of competencies through different process, and now helped and certified by the FCL system. And similarly, we are at this Capacity Building Committee in charge of compiling all what FIDIC had produced from in the history, and what had been called the FIDIC Body of Knowledge, FBOK. So now probably I will introduce, if Barbara, if you might put the slide of the panel. So we'll have three different questions, and we have something like 50 minutes to speak on that. And then after that, please be free from your computer to put any questions on the chat box, so that during half an hour from 1 o'clock to 1:30, we would be able to answer your questions. And this topic, once again, is really there to collect your feedback, to collect some information as to the needs of what to put in the program for certifying a contract manager, and the role of the contract manager. Is he an engineer, a FIDIC engineer, or is he someone different? Is he working for the contractor, the employer, all these sort of things? So the panel now is composed of 4 people from all around the globe. This is FIDIC, the FIDIC world. We have Jaime Gray from Peru, Pierre Loriou from United States, Asel El Hussan from Middle East, and Mr. Chung from Asia. So we cover all around the globe, and I will leave them to present themselves before each questions. So first question is, it would be to Jaime, please. In your opinion, what do you think are the main skills? What do you think are the main skills a contract manager should possess? So please, Jaime.
Thank you for the invitation. Let me say that yes, I'm Jaime Gray. I am a construction lawyer. I would like to put an emphasis on that. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a construction lawyer. I think that's very important. I've been working with FIDIC for a few years, and I am also a certified FIDIC trainer. That said, I would like to answer to your direct question, Pierre, by saying that the main skills of a FIDIC contract manager, in my view, are the following ones. First, he or she must have real and practical knowledge of the FIDIC forms. 2, he or she has to have a reasonable knowledge of the engineering and construction industry. Number 3, he or she has to have managerial abilities. By managerial abilities, I mean that he or she must have the skills of decision-making, negotiating skills, having good communication, and soft skills. Soft skills, so to speak, because I cannot describe this skill 100%, so I will call it soft skills. Okay. I think that during all the phases of the project, these skills are quite necessary. I would say that they are of the utmost importance. So let me spend for a few minutes, please. I think we have 4 minutes only on the thoughts that I just shared with you. During the procurement stage of a construction project, a FIDIC contracts manager should identify and become familiar with the characteristics of the project, the engineering and construction market, and of course, of the risk of the project. and how to face them. And then we'll decide on the best way to allocate those risks. Consequently, the FIDIC contract manager should decide on which FIDIC book best fits the needs of the specific project. The FIDIC CM, the contract manager, simply cannot take appropriate decisions if he or she does not have sufficient knowledge of the FIDIC forms, risk allocation, and of the engineering and construction best practices. Later on, the employer will start a bid process and a negotiation process with the bidder who submitted the best proposal. A sensible negotiation requires, again, managerial abilities such as negotiation, decision-making, communication, and the famous now soft skills. During the execution of the project, all these skills are also necessary to correctly administer the contract, follow the different procedures, and take all pertinent decisions, plus negotiate as required. Finally, the same skills are vital to properly present claims, use dispute boards, and arbitrate. A few examples of mistakes using FIDIC's forms in my region, Latin America. I have seen employers who built hydroelectric plants using yellow books when they already had all the design duly completed. Senseless. Also, I have seen parties who never follow the different procedures and tools established in the FIDIC forms. And most boggling of all, I saw a case in Colombia in which parties decided to remove the whole clause 20 of their 1999 Pink Book after a year using dispute boards. They literally said in the addendum they signed that no benefit at all was obtained by the parties and the project after a year and a half using dispute boards. They simply did not know how to employ FIDIC forms or the dispute board. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaime, for this first answer of the first question. There will be 3 questions. And now, please, we might have Pierre Loriot from World Bank. He's in the United States. So very early morning to you. You can unmute.
Thank you, Stephane. Indeed, I'm in DC. It's 6 o'clock here, so I am in the basement actually, and it's very cold. That's why I have a jumper to keep warm, and I'm in basement not to wake up my kids. So good morning, everybody, and good to see you this morning here. Good afternoon and good evening to those who are in Asia. Just quickly introducing myself. So I'm a senior hydropower specialist working at DC for the World Bank, working mainly in Africa. And I'm both a project manager and a task team leader supporting hydropower development in Africa. So coming to your question, Stephane, first thing I would like to add as well that I'm happy to share my personal experience, and I really want to thank Nelson, William, and yourself for the invitation. And I will speak with my experience in the World Bank, but as well before as a consultant with consulting engineering companies, and as well with EDF, the French electrical utility. So I will share my experience. It's not the World Bank Group position, but happy to share that with all of you. So coming to your question about skills deemed required at the 3 stages of a contract: procurement, implementation, and dispute resolution. My first comment is that it's interesting that we can see in different institutions different names for contract managers. And for example, in the bank, most of our staff working in this area we call them procurement specialists because they are more involved in upstream preparation of projects. And whereas when I was in the industry, indeed, we talked more about contract managers. And in both these worlds, when you ask them, do you manage both aspects, procurement and contract management, they say yes, but titles are still different. And when you think about dispute resolution in FIDIC, of course, there are adjudicators. So you have 3 titles for 3 phases. So of course, there might be different skills required for these three phases. So on the procurement, the skill that is mostly required, and we can see it here in the World Bank, is about knowledge about the process. We have to follow the rules, and that's a profile which is more focused on process. Now, when moving to implementation, the skills we are looking more are, I would say, project management skills. So that, as Jaime mentioned, so that this person has a more holistic and integrated knowledge of the life of the contract and of the activities. And before this webinar, I had exchanges with procurement colleagues who act as well as contract managers, and they told me that, and that's my experience as well, that the profile that they saw as more adequate for contract managers are often engineers with experience in the field with supervision, and that's really where we see the added value in contract management with this experience. And the third skill in project implementation that is often very valuable is knowledge of jurisprudence, you know, having this experience on how you translate the FIDIC clauses, the FIDIC spirit before the later, and the jurisprudence is very valuable as a skill. Stephane, I don't have an eye on the clock, so you tell me when I have eaten my 4 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Just wait me when it's 1 minute. And then on the last part you mentioned about dispute resolution, of course, here the skill that is mostly required is legal. And it's legal knowledge, because you may go to, you know, to legal cases, and that's where FIDIC adjudicators are very valuable. Let me finish on that question on one thing. Indeed, skills are different in the 3 phases, but from my experience, instead of saying perhaps we should change people from procurement and change contract managers and then leave only the floor to adjudicators at the end, my experience is that it's more important that you have one person who is committed all the way through, who bring the knowledge and all the way through of the whole phases, instead of changing people, because the knowledge of all events, of all background, of people, of communications for us is the most important. And even written communications are important, but we know that all the knowledge behind that is also very important, and is, I would say, a skill that is really important. So yeah, and then if you need like, you know, very accurate support advice, then you can hire or search this support, and FIDIC experts, and I'm sure the FIDIC contract managers that you're going to certify will be very helpful, you know, as ad hoc skills we could pick and mobilize to support. And that's what we do for example, I'm a project manager for the West African Power Pool. We have had a procurement specialist who is now a contract manager, and when he has legal issues, he just reaches out to the legal advisor of the West African Power Pool. Thank you, Stephane.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Now we switch to Asel, and I repeat the question for those who had joined since. So in your opinion, Asel, what do you think are the main skills a FIDIC contract manager should possess? Thank you, Asel.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Allow me first to introduce myself. My name is Asel Hussan, and by profession, I'm a civil engineer and FIDIC accredited trainer and affiliate member. I have more than 25 years of experience from Algeria to Thailand as managing projects and as a trainer, including the Middle East and the GCC countries. I'm glad to be here and to answer this question. Yes, I agree with whatever my colleagues had said, and we'll talk about the risk allocation in between the parties. Usually we will look at the employer because he is the one who's allocating the risk. But also we need to recognize that the contractor, he is receiving the contract, reading the contract, and he should accept that risk and the price or reject it at the beginning of the project. The problem we're facing that contractors will not even read the contract, or they will not really evaluate the risk. And they will say, if I will evaluate and the price everything, I will never get the project, so we will live with it later, which is a wrong approach. So the risk allocation, yes, FIDIC contracts are balanced when the employer or the consulting engineer who's helping the employer will move it to one party, the other party have to study it well and to understand it well before they will price. And they have to recognize the cash flow from the procurement stage, that the contractor have to be cash positive. Rather than that, he will not be able to continue with the project. Securities and guarantees have to be studied well. Is it required? What's exactly required? What's the percentage? Is the contract that big? The contractors are that big and they can procure that. And we have to look at the exposure for each parties before you will award the project. What are the exposure of the employer and the contractor throughout the project till the completion of the project? Now, during the process of the project, I found that most countries will lack the proper contract administration when you are talking about the payment and payment administration, or about the variations, how to prepare it, how to assess it, plus the contract management. The skills on how to prepare a claim or how to assess the claim is really lacking in this part of the world. They don't understand the variation, they don't understand the claims, and then we will end up with a mess. We talked about the risk and the risk allocation. If you studied your risk properly and if you price it properly, then you have a contingency plan. And what you're supposed to do whenever this risk will eventuate. It's very important for the contract manager, even if he doesn't understand all the risk, because the risk is coming from all the different departments or parties whom they are involved in the project, but to manage that risk management process and to ensure that it's in there and it is put in place and people are adhering to that. During the dispute resolution, from my experience, you will find that many cases or many disputes will go to the dispute resolution without having the dispute crystallized, to the adjudication or to the arbitration at the end. Now I'm talking in terms of the claim and the counterclaim. Does it have to follow the same process or no? And when and how you can utilize the Dispute Adjudication Board, and as per FIDIC 2017 DAAB, they don't really know how to use it, how to utilize it, how to get the advice, and how to refer the problem to the adjudicators. Plus, they don't recognize the jurisdiction and the seat of the arbitration and how this will be linked together. From the beginning of the project, when you're starting and signing the contract, you have to recognize that whenever you're going to have an arbitration, where do you want it to be? And which country? And do you want to use New York Convention, or the whole thing is regional and you don't need that big exposure? Which rules you want to have? If you will have it proper at the beginning, I'm done. Also, when you go to dispute resolution, you should be able to recognize it and administer it properly. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Asel. Now we are jumping. This is magic. We come from Peru to Washington, Middle East, and now we are jumping to Asia, where Chung is there to speak and to answer the question. So in your opinion, Chung, what do you think are the main skills of FIDIC contract manager?
Hello, Stephane and everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm a civil engineer and also working in legal department for PCC3. I really love the idea of a FIDIC certified contract manager and also FIDIC certified consulting engineer. Regarding your question, I think that some skill already mentioned by PA, like the legal knowledge and skill, is very important. And also risk management skill, negotiation and collaboration skill, project management skill, and decision-making skill. However, when we come to the process, in the procurement phase, the legal knowledge may become to the selection of contract and drafting skill, as well as the knowing of the conflict between civil law and common law. During the project management phase, the knowledge of site-specific requirement of the country of project, and also the regulation of that country, as well as the claim management will be more important. And finally, during the dispute resolution, the skill on the legal procedure are very much important. For the other skill like risk management, negotiation and collaboration, and decision making, all of them are necessary from the beginning until the end. I want to mention one case that's due to the lacking of skill in project in Vietnam. That's they apply many underground metro project. They apply the Silver Book 1999 due to lacking of the knowledge, the legal skill, as well as the knowledge on selection of the contract. Here in the Silver Book, and in the very beginning, phase 5, they mentioned about these are not sufficient for work underground and not sufficient if the employer want to closely control the contractor work, or the employer want to review what the construction drawing or the interim payment to be determined by someone. That is some issue already there in the project, but because lacking of the legal skill and selection of a contract, that many employers here doing and select such the Silver Book instead of the Yellow Book. So this is just one example. I finished for my part regarding your question, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chung. And now we are on the second question. So back to Jaime in Peru. In your opinion, Jaime, what are the main issues a FIDIC contract manager encounters in project within your region? So what are the main issues a FIDIC contract manager encounters in projects within your region?
Thank you, Stephane. I will mention 3 issues, again, the main issues. So the first is the lack of understanding of the importance of having a contract manager. Okay, so I will say that it's a lack of understanding of the importance of contract administration. In my experience in Latin America, I have seen numerous cases in which employers and contractors are absolutely unaware of the importance of good contract administration. For example, during a hydroelectric power plant project, a contractor decided not to involve its contract administration department in the project, as would normally be expected, because the contractor had a good relationship with the employer and trusted that that would be sufficient. The contractor opted to ask one of their managers who had the closest relationship with the employer's general manager to be the single point of contact with the employer. As you can guess, the results were less than desirable. The second issue is the lack of understanding of the FIDIC form risk assignment and tools from the parties and stakeholders. Let me please make my case by sharing an example with you all. During the construction of a dock at a Peruvian port, an employer, at the request of the financiers, I have to say, radically changed the risk assignment established in the Red Book. The modifications were so radical that the results were closer to the risk assignment which is established in the Silver Book. It would have been easier for everyone involved if the employer decided to use a Silver Book from the very beginning and not making these experiments by radically modifying the Red Book. And finally, clashes. One important issue are the clashes between local law and the FIDIC forms. FIDIC forms are made up of good contract practices that have been duly employed and proven all around the world. And it is the duty of the local lawyers to adapt them to the applicable local law to avoid conflicts or clashes. For example, in some jurisdictions in Latin America, you have to modify the delayed damages clause in the particular conditions, and in these countries, you apply penalties, not delayed damages, which, by the way, cannot be applied, penalties, in common law jurisdictions. Also, some other aspects that need to have careful consideration in civil law countries are fitness for purpose and the defects notification period, just to mention a couple. And these three are the main issues that I identified, Stephane. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaime. It was quite interesting to see that the choice of the right color of the FIDIC book is really important. And we heard about Chung speaking of a silver book in a metro, which is not probably desirable, and yourself jumping from a red to a yellow book by changing the particular conditions. Thank you. Now we have probably on the list is Pierre, the second. So on the second question, if you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Stephane. Let me do one first point about authorities, contracting authorities, because contract managers face some issues, but before all, the contracting authorities face issues in contract management as a whole because of a lack of contract managers. And the lack of resources. In the region where I work, many developing countries and more specifically Africa, it's a big challenge for us to manage to get contract managers recruited. So I think that it is very good that FIDIC plans to do more training and more certification so that more contract managers are available. So now moving to your question about issues faced by contract managers, it's linked to my first point, and that's why I made it. It's a lack of resources. They feel often alone, from my experience. They don't have much support in their region because there are very few contract managers, especially on the African continent, and they lack, consultation of senior contract managers from whom they could get, again, this very important jurisprudence and interpretation of FIDIC clauses. The second challenge I can see, an issue they face, is high pressures from different stakeholders. Contract managers are what I feel are in the interface, and from my experience, they are at the interface of many stakeholders, from authorities, from contractors, from corporate pressures, and basically they undergo a large amount of pressure, considering the large amount of money at stake, the projects at stake, and in some of our countries where we work, sometimes as well political pressure. So that's a big issue they have to face, and they need support on that aspect. Another challenge they face is getting the information. Getting, the information from the ground, getting information from the life of the project. And what I'm pushing in the project I manage in the World Bank is to have contract managers attending all, weekly, monthly meetings of the projects, so that they get this information, that they get the knowledge from the activity, so that they can translate all the events in contract management. Sometimes I like to see contract managers as translators of events on the ground to the contract, to communication, letters, and responses to claims. So I think the challenge is for them is to get the information, so they should be, at part of the core team of a project, and that's what we push in our projects. On my last point about challenges is I think your FIDIC colleagues as well can notice that we, at least on the World Bank, we noticed the increasing number of claims. It's on procurement, on during implementations, contractors put through more and more claims, and contract managers, again, because they are often alone or they don't have much support, they face a large amount of work and again pressure, as I mentioned. Yeah, so basically the four issues I mentioned: pressure from different parties, getting the information, my second point. My third point was about support, getting support. That's often a challenge. And my fourth one was the increasing number of claims. So again, I think it's good that FIDIC is working on capacity building. And in the bank, we use the word human capital. Training people, training contract managers, it brings capital to the regions where we work, and developing countries as far as the World Bank is concerned. Thank you, Stephane.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Very interesting. And now we have Asel. So on the same questions, what are the issues a FIDIC contract manager encounters in project within your region? Thank you.
Actually, I want to continue from Pierre when he is saying that it's a challenge how to get the reports and the information. I worked as an employer and I worked as a contractor, and one change I insisted and I pushed it through the companies that contracts and commercial have to report to the CEO and not to operation and project managers. When you're having the independency for the contracts team is when you will be able to have your voice heard, and you will be able to highlight the risks and the contingencies and the way forward. But as long as you're under operation, you still be having the influence of their way of doing things rather than the right way as a contracts manager. The other problem I will talk about, and it's from experience, I was an employer, and one time we underestimated the risk in one project, and we ended up paying triple, and instead of finishing the project in 6 months, we finished it in 14 months. So estimating the risk properly at the end, at the beginning, and not to give it to the cheap price, give it to the right contractor who's having the right price is essential and very important. And this is a challenge for the contract manager, how he will convince the management that here he's cheap, but it's wrong. We will face problems at the end. Allocating the risk, all the risk to the contractor, this a challenge will be on the contractor or the contract manager from the contractor side. And I will say that understanding the time bar and the consequences is essential. And when the team, they don't understand that there is a time bar, and if you don't follow this time bar, what are the consequences? What's going to happen? This is very important. I worked in countries like Jordan or like Syria or Lebanon, where you will find that people get used to remeasured contract, but whenever they are having a form of lump sum, they don't understand the differences between lump sum and remeasured contract and the BOQ or schedule of rate, how it's going to work in there. So shifting in between the forms of the contract is a challenge for them. The absence of the determination from the engineer side for the claims and the variations, you will find it piled up till the end. This will affect the contractor's cash flow. This will affect the exposure of the contractor and what he's going to do if your claim is not approved. Are you going to accelerate? Are you going to execute that variation, which is 2-3 millions, or you will wait and you will delay the project? It's really a game when the engineer will delay the determination and he will not give it on time. And before FIDIC 2017, we didn't have a time bar for the determination, but in 2017, we are having that time bar. The employer's interference with the engineer, and he is putting a lot of pressure that, yes, this is your determination, don't issue it. And the employer, as a paymaster for the engineer, he can have that influence, and you will see it a lot. And I saw it in all the countries, from Algeria to Thailand, that the engineer will be influenced by the employer, and he will do only whatever the employer is saying. And even if he believes, you will be sitting with the workshops with the engineer, and you will convince them with your case for the extension of time claim. But when it will go to issuing the determination, it will stop and it will disappear, and you will not have it, or you just have a blank rejection. We don't know even the rejection, how it's supposed to be. Like, you will find the engineer is telling you that your project is far from completion, while the contract is saying that you have to be specific what's required to complete it. I just want to say one small thing. One, people till now, they don't understand the beauty of the ADR, education and arbitration. And you will find a lot of contractors are saying, yes, I have arbitration, but I want to go to court. They don't understand what's the meaning of putting your case in the hand of people whom they are very well experienced. You're choosing them, you're picking them. This is another challenge in this part of the world. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Asel. And now we have Chung on the question, the same. What are the main issues a FIDIC contract manager encounters in project within your region in Vietnam?
Okay, Vietnam, we are from Southeast Asia, but when I talk with the college in other Southeast Asian country, especially for the one who is in the same civil law, yes, we found that one of the issues is the lacking of staff with sufficient legal knowledge and skill. Why? When you need someone to start prepare the contract, then the knowledge on what is the difference between common law and civil law, between the delay damage and penalty, taking over a certificate and acceptance certificate is quite important. But if someone don't have such kind of knowledge, then just copy and paste and follow with the contract, then it can cause dispute during the implementation and project management. Other one is the country-specific legal requirement, like approval of subcontractor, approval of design, or role of the supervisor and engineer. Such kind of thing is also need the legal knowledge and skill. And finally, the very important skill is the claim and dispute management is also very important. So the lacking of such important knowledge is essential. Another difficulty is the guidance of some authority of some government agency are conflict with the FIDIC standard condition of contract, as well as the FIDIC guide. For example, in my country, the Ministry of Planning and Investment appointed to use FIDIC Silver Book 1999 for the design and build or the plan contract. But, and we have separate one for the turnkey contract. So it is some misunderstanding and cause the dispute. Other one is Ministry of Finance. They specify that the DB, dispute board, only be organized after the both parties have the dispute but cannot resolve. Then it will be only ad hoc dispute board only. There is no permanent dispute boards as per the requirement of the FIDIC contract. Other one is the state audit office. They require that if the contractor design drawing have any change from the original drawing in the employer requirement, then such change has to be approved by the relevant authority, government agency. So I want to present one case in my LinkedIn page that in Metro 1, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, in 3 years ago, the employer had agreed with the design of the contractor to reduce the thickness of one slab, 170 meter line, from 2 meter to 1.5 meter. However, the state audit officer say no. You have to resubmit to the People Committee of Ho Chi Minh City to get approval before you can do that. Such kind of thing delay the project and also affect all party and counter dispute. That's in my example for the difficulty in our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chung. It was quite interesting to have your view from Southeast Asia. Next question is for Jaime. We are jumping back to Peru. Jaime, which specific skills should be enhanced, in your opinion, for the FIDIC contract manager in your region to be more effective? Which specific skills should be enhanced, in your opinion, for the FIDIC contract manager in your region to be more effective? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephane. And I think that the 3 skills that I mentioned when I responded to your further questions should be enhanced. And that's actual knowledge of FIDIC forms, knowledge of construction, of the construction industry, and managerial skills. And to provide you with a short answer to what is necessary to enhance those skills, I will say training, more training, and practical experience. These 3 things. Training in the use of FIDIC forms, that's very logical. In my view, FIDIC managers, contract managers should complete all the FIDIC training modules. Module 0 for proper understanding of FIDIC as an institution and of the white book, the client consultant module. Module 1 for a full understanding of the Rainbow Suite, whether you're using the 1999 forms or the 2017 versions. The practical use of FIDIC contracts. Also module 2 for making and defending claims correctly. Asel has mentioned a few words on this. The claim and dispute resolution under FIDIC. And of course, modules 3 and 4 for understanding DAB, which is quite necessary. I will say absolutely necessary. And finally, the FIDIC contracts management and administration module. So, you know, all of these modules are really necessary. Second, regarding the training in construction and engineering projects, I know that technical courses are of special relevance. However, in my experience, practical knowledge is of paramount importance. Having the experience of living and working at construction sites, you know, having muddy boots, going to the site, that's very important. And I can personally testify to the fact that not only do young engineers enjoy practicing what they have studied, but young construction lawyers too also eagerly learn how a project is designed, built, and operated. And regarding managerial abilities, it's very difficult to me to give specific examples. However, I should say that in this case, in these skills, I think that it is essential to understand that good courses are not sufficient. They are excellent, but not sufficient. They should be supplemented by practical knowledge and real leadership from the managers of the clients, contractors, and engineers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaime. That was straight to the point, and I will probably ask Nelson to call you to join the capacity building committee because you're doing my job, so it's fantastic. Okay, thank you. So next speaker is so Pierre on the question, which specific skills should be enhanced in your opinion for the FIDIC contract manager in your region to be more effective? And sorry, you have 2 minutes, and the next speakers also 2 minutes. each.
Okay, so we have to be very quick, yeah. So basically, the needs to be tailored to different regions and sometimes to different countries. And Trung mentioned, for example, common law countries, and in Africa, for example, I think some training for French-speaking and Portuguese-speaking countries where common laws is more applicable would be very useful, so that they get more understanding of the background of FIDIC packages. Again, yeah, it makes the link to the first question. The trainings and needs in projects and countries where I work are again a lot about jurisprudence, getting more training on examples, and that would be highly needed. And the second point, to make it short, I would see, is training in procurement strategies. We now in the World Bank, we've introduced a new tool, which is called a project procurement strategy for development, PPSD. And we see a very high value to that. And I'm sure FIDIC can help on that. It's upstream work to design the key directions and key features of procurement and of future contracts. And you focus on strategic points. And having some training in strategic, in procurement strategies, to use the exact word, would be very useful to contract managers, so that they support owners in that direction. And quickly, two other knowledge that would be very useful. One is about administrative and editing skills. Documents filing, database, with the new IT tools, you can really support contract managers, with a few keywords. If you do good filing, you can really improve efficiencies of contract manager. Let me stop here because it was only 2 minutes. Thank you. Over to you, Stephane.
Thank you, Pierre. Now, Asel, in your opinion, which specific skills should be enhanced for the FIDIC contract manager in your region to be more effective?
Actually, as someone who's working in claims, I have to claim my 4 or 5 minutes rather than 2 minutes, but I will let this go this time. The main issue which we're facing is the drafting skills. Sometimes I'm reading a contract where I don't understand what's meant by this. The second thing is you will find that people, they don't recognize the different type of claims and what the difference, what you're claiming under each one. Like when you talk about extension of time, is different than disruption or loss of productivity or idle labor or idle equipment. So you'll find that they are mixing up in between these claims. So the claim management and the claim understanding is not clear for them. The legal aspect, if it's coming from the beginning of the project in the procurement, or when you're going to dispute resolution, they don't understand the interference of the local or the governing law on your contract, or when you are going into arbitration or a court case, how to choose your lawyers, how to choose your arbitrators. The steps which you have to use it during the dispute resolution. And now I'm heavily involved in dispute resolution, so you will find it really challenging and it needs to be enhanced. That when you're having an expert, I'm not your expert, I'm an independent expert. So you cannot influence what do you have on your expert. So you will find when you're coming to dispute resolution and arbitration, you will find that it needs a lot of enhancement because people are not comfortable with arbitration, they are not familiar with it, and they don't really go through the process smoothly. On time.
Thank you. Very good.
Thanks, Stephen.
Now, Trung, which specific skills should be enhanced in your region on contract manager to be more effective, please?
Yeah, as I said, two. First one is the legal knowledge and skill, which involve both the contract selection and drafting skill, and knowing the conflict of civil law and common law, and knowing the skill for claim and dispute. The next one is the risk management. And finally, maybe the negotiation and collaboration skill is also important. case. I want to bring two cases. First one is regarding the risk management. In one project, in power plant project between Chinese and Japanese contractor consortium and a local employer, there is a study, and based on that one, they found that 38 modification to the contract, general condition of the contract, have increased the risk allocated to the contractor. And in the conclusion, they said that had it been in ordinary project, the two companies, the contractor, might reconsider whether to enter into the contract in the first place. Yes. So very important in the risk management and measurement from the beginning of the project. The next one is next case regarding the claim management. In this one case decided by the Supreme Court of Vietnam in 2016 with the FIDIC contract, the Supreme Court diminished the first instance court and the appeal court because based on the clause 2.5 of FIDIC contract and clause 3.5 of FIDIC contract, because the employer failed to give the notice as per clause 2.5 and the engineer failed to give the determination as per clause 3.5. Therefore, the claim not complied with the procedure and the employer claim of $260,000 US is diminished. So for this case, it clearly does acknowledge on the claim management and procedure is very important. So that's my 2 points. Thank you.
So thank you very much, all the speakers. We had very good examples, and these exchanges were very rich. And I note down on my papers a lot of different ideas. So thank you very much for the job we are doing now to specify for the FIDIC certified contract manager what should they be able to do, and regarding your experience. So now we are opening for the next 28 minutes Q&A session, question and answer. So probably you have the capacity of asking your question on the chat box. And then we will be two moderator because Nelson is helping me, that is very kind, to allocate the right question to the right speaker. We'll try our best, but because we are numerous, probably we'll have to find the best question for the best speaker, but it's not easy. So allow us a little bit of time. So now the first question, just a minute, maybe for, I see a direct question to Pierre, representing Africa. Do you experience a difference in Francophone and Anglophone Africa, who in general have a different history and basis in setting up their administration? From Arjan Deher.
Thank you, Stephane. Yeah, I think it just echoes the comment I made that perhaps training should be adapted to countries and cultures. And to answer the question, my general feeling is to link it to the topic of the seminar on FIDIC, is that indeed French-speaking countries, and I mentioned perhaps Portuguese-speaking countries like Angola, Mozambique, they indeed their laws and administration is more based on the common laws, on the civil laws. Sorry, excuse me. So obviously, having some training in common laws would help this administration to have a more a mindset which is more focused on, more adequate to FIDIC, which I understand is more based on common law. So that was my main question, my main point. Thank you.
Thank you. So next question from Nelson.
Thank you very much, Stephane. Good job so far. You did a great job. A lot of questions are coming through the floor. I mean, some of them are wide-ranging. But let me start with the basic one. And I think this is actually from a guy called Ali Ayad. And he said, always FIDIC contracts are heavily amended by particular conditions of contract. Why are they heavily amended? I think I'll put it to Pierre. You know, you work in the bank. Why are the FIDIC contract amended? I suspect most of the bank one are not amended. What's your take, Pierre?
Yeah, I mean, there are two ways to look at it. They are amended before or during the implementation. So looking at the World Bank, you know that World Bank template contracts are inspired on largely based on FIDIC contracts, but they've been amended once for all. We don't update that every year. It happens perhaps every 10 years or something like that. So so now looking at this part, I think they are amended to adapt to some of the what we call the bank policies and the operational policies, so that they bridge to that point. And you know that in the World Bank, environmental and social aspects are fundamental. So we are on recently approved environmental and social framework requires some adaptation as well. So that's why they are amended. Then about amendments during life of the contract, I mean, that's, yeah, I think it's part of any contracts, and usually we don't see that many amendments, but the challenge is more about claims. If amendments have to come, it means we miss something at the beginning. That's why I highly recommended the use of procurement strategies, which prevents amendments. Actually, if you have a good procurement strategy, you have less amendments. Thank you.
Pierre, can I just button in there? I think you are absolutely right. The World Bank have a standard document. The only thing they change is their standard procurement document, which is the back end, and that address the environmental and policy and issue of gender abuse issue, which I think is standard. And most of the MDB tend to follow the same protocol without changing, even though the yellow book was, the pink book was very much along that line. And the new 2017 document adopted were very much of adopting the standard general condition. And FIDIC is advocating the issue about golden principle, which basically said, you know, there are a number of clauses which are absolutely essential that you do not touch. And I suspect, you know, that question maybe can go to, you know, Amy as well, because from your point of view, you probably have more amendment than Pierre. And after that, Stephane will take floor. So, you know,
yeah.
Amy, what's your view on the subject?
Thank you, Nelson. I think that if something is not broken, please don't fix it. So I think that we should respect the risk allocation, which is part of the good practices that the FIDIC forms bring for everyone in the construction and engineering industry. What I have seen is that when the forms are heavily amended, in general, the results are terrible. And I would like to put emphasis on that. The results are terrible. And it is a must to respect the golden principles. Please do not simply shorten the periods of time for responses, etc. It simply doesn't make sense, nor simply, you know, take out your clause 20. Dispute boards are an unbelievably useful tool, okay, as well as arbitration, etc. That's my answer, Nelson. Thank you very much.
Stephane, the floor is yours.
Yeah, we have a question which is quite interesting from Armando Sanchez. How to deal with investors that are changing the spirit of a specific type of FIDIC book? And I would like Chung to answer this one in the light of what he said about a silver book on a metro. You know that FIDIC had edited a nice emerald book in which you have a combination of underground works on a BOQ system on a geotechnical baseline report and a lump sum for the rest as a yellow book. Chung, your idea on that, how to deal with investors and employers that are changing the spirit of a specific FIDIC book?
Very good question. frankly speaking, it's quite hard to persuade with the employer with such kind of mindset. Yes, I'm the employer, I have the money, and I will determine the contract like this, like that. However, we have the golden principle. We have the golden principle already there for FIDIC, and in case that's the funding come from the MDB like World Bank or ADBs or JICA, we can also have some kind of request and propose recommend from the lender. But if we are the contractor or we are the consultant, we try to persuade based on the basic principle. But frankly speaking, I think it's still quite hard in our case. Yeah.
Nelson, you take one.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's a question from, I think it's Isaiah Lungi, and this is to the panelists, and I might probably help you with this if you haven't got the answer. The question is, on a PPP project, is the silver book the most appropriate form of contract to be used? If yes, what are the amendments that can be made in the particular condition? Now, I'm not quite sure whether you can give that specific answer, but is the silver book the nearest you can use for a PPP project? Let me actually bring Axel and then, tune into it. Axel, what's your take?
From my experience in the PPP contract, I think if you will use any FIDIC contract, then you will be really amending it heavily because it's having its own terms and conditions, especially with the ownership and the payment plan, how it's going to be. So it doesn't matter which book, if it is silver or not silver, you will encounter a lot of changes to that. When you're saying silver or lead, it depends on the design responsibility and the risk you are taking. But you have to prepare yourself to heavily amend all of the conditions from the ownership to the payment and the benefit how it's going to be shared to everything in the contract.
Okay, can I bring Chung in? What's your take on the subject? Because I think I may have a solution. Chung, what's your view? I'd like to get the panel.
Yes. Our Vietnam PPP law just passed last year in the June 2020, and we have made a research based on the law, and we found that FIDIC Yellow Book is more suitable in our case, in Vietnam case, because with such a requirement of the law, make it more difficult for the investor and for the contractor to comply. So in that case, Yellow Book is more suitable than the Silver Book. So my suggestion, it depends on the law of the country, whether it will require much on the contractor and the employer. And in the beginning of the Silver Book, page 5 something, you can find out the the note that the warning that's when you should not apply Silver Book. So my suggestion for some country is Yellow Book, and otherwise please check with the beginning of Silver Book. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What I can tell you is that the good news is that the FIDIC board has just recently approved for the contract committee to develop a complete suite of contracts for PPP. So that's good news. So, Chum, I might be calling on you to support and help, in shaping that. The terms of reference of that is about to be approved at meeting tomorrow, which Bill will be sitting on. And once the terms of reference is approved, then the CC will be composing a team to help us to foster that development. So please, those who are willing, either as a panelist or those who are behind the scene, listen with a lot of experiences, because PPP is a very complicated situation. You have to look at different layers of the people in the chain, either from the sponsor, from the concession company, from the design and build contractor, for the operator, and also the asset manager. So it's not a straightforward issue. So to me, if you ask me right now, there is no one single document that is the best, but the document that will be the best for it is yet to be produced. And there's a demand for that, particularly the banks. The banks are saying, we want to encourage PPP in countries which have fundamentally not having all the regulatory environment. So they want a suite of FIDIC contract that complements. And it may be in that process, depending on how they package the project, that they may have to consider using different particular contract. So in answer to your original question, The board has approved the development of a PPP contract, and that is coming through. It may take a year or two, but we're coming through. So Stephane, the floor is back to you.
Thank you. Back to the one question in the chat box from Christian Grospoff. Initially, will FIDIC PM, project management, and we insist that it is contract management. So FIDIC CM certification be based on experience or testing or exam or similar? This is a question we are actually working on very precisely with FCL, but I try to have the answer from Jaime, please. Do you think we have to pass an exam if we want to become a FIDIC certified contract manager? Do you think it might be testing exams? What is your view? And you don't have the answer from FCL. It's not cheated.
Thank you, Stephane. I attended the FCL conference, and I very much support that initiative. Having, you know, an independent body certifying is a wonderful thing, and only bring benefit to all the engineering and construction community. And my answer, therefore, is yes. There is a need for certification. There is a program, and now we have the certifying body, which is FIDIC FCL. And yes, we need to certify. And how you can pass this exam? I think that experience may be sufficient, but the sensible way is to develop both training, again, training, and then practical experience. I think that these three together will allow the participants to be certified. That's what I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. Nelson?
Thank you very much, Stephane. There's a question here which from Mutanda for Razak. And this is to the panelists. I'll have to think about who is the right candidate to put it for. I'll try and strain my eyes. I think considering that FIDIC does not object the employer to assign one of his own staff in a position of engineer looking to the FIDIC's Red Book. So my question is, when is FIDIC recommend the employer to adopt this principle? So what about, you know, when do we think FIDIC should encourage the employer to use one of their staff to be the engineer? So can I put that across to Axel first, and then maybe to Pierre? So I get the commercial side, the private sector, and also from the government and the World Bank side. Axel, what's your take on the subject?
Actually, for me, I see that the engineer will be one of the employer's employee or personnel. I think it's wrong and should not be endorsed. Now, if we look at the Silver Book, where we don't have an engineer, and it's only a relation between the employer and the contractor, this will give a ground that the employer can do the impartial or be fair and reasonable. But usually I look at the Silver Book as very unique because the risk in there and the type of projects you have to take it in the Silver Book is different. So whenever you're going to Red Book, I don't think should be the case, or we have to encourage that the engineer, especially with his sensitive, let's say, position or role under the FIDIC book, especially the Red Book. I believe that most of the disputes we're having is because the engineer didn't do his role right. So what if he will be under the influence of the employer? So I don't think it should be enforced in any case under the Red Book by FIDIC.
Thank you very much.
This is my personal views.
Yeah, Pierre, what's your take? Should the engineer be an employee, direct employee, and seconded from the client? And is that a fair? Is that a balance? Does he give it the independent view that needs to be that the engineer has to be fair and balanced in decision making? What's your take?
That's a very good question. The first thing is, I mean, ideally, I mean, if the owner has all the capacity to have staff who can stand as engineers, I think that would be good. I mean, they are here to protect the interest of the contracting authority, and that's I would say a personal view, because we support governments and we support contracting authorities mainly. So I mean, if they have the capacity, I think it's fair if they can, you know, mobilize these resources and be a good interlocutor during implementation, because the reality is, I mentioned it a bit earlier, the reality is that contractors are far more skills in that respect. There are far more contract managers with more experience. So in a way, if it could balance that imbalance, especially in developing countries, I think that would be good. But then there is a long way to go, but that would be great. And if FIDIC can support that, that would be very useful. But then the reality, as a matter of fact, is that we see that owner engineers, at least in the projects I've seen, they come from consulting companies. They are outsourced, but anyway, they are paid by the contracting authority. So their mandate is mainly to protect the contracting authority. But it's an interesting point, and it's a kind of vision that needs to be further discussed. And yeah.
Thank you, Pierre. Stephane, I'm handing over to you. You got 1 minute, and then I'll get you back. So.
Yeah, 1 minute, and then we stop. There is a question quite interesting from Abdul Mumin Khan. My question is whether the contract manager should be the engineer or an employee of the employer, which is quite similar to the one we had, but I would probably transform the question as to whether the FIDIC certified contract manager should be from the employer side or the contractor side. Do we think we shall choose or not? Jaime, on this one?
Thank you. I think that the CM is a position which should be available for the parties, I mean the employer, the contractor, the engineer, and some stakeholders. I think that the community has to be benefited from having professionals duly certified CMs. That's my answer, Stephane. Thank you.
Yeah, we totally agree. Thank you. So that was easy. I think that we have to sort of wrap up now, and I will leave the floor to Nelson, and thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you very much, Stephane, for an excellent, well-conducted session. At this point in time, I believe there's a question that comes through from the floor, which is the last poll. And basically, do you think FIDIC's new strategy for capacity building, as outlined in this seminar, will improve stakeholders' capacity? Yes or no? It should be a simple answer. Do we think, creating this sort of, contract manager, certification, would it be a positive one for the industry or not? So time to vote. Barbara, do we have the result? Unquestionably, yes. 97% yes, and only 3% no. So thank you very much. I think, Stephane, your case has been well put together. At this point in time, before I sum up, I'm going to invite Bill to give his summation. Bill, you've been, very, very quiet. There is no button at all this time. I'm sure you're taking note. There's a lot that's being said. What is your view on the conversation that we've had so far? Bill, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Nelson. And one of the reasons I've been so quiet is because the panelists have been so informative and hitting some really complex issues that have great arguments on all sides. It's you've touched on a lot of things like local law and the golden principles. I mean, all sorts of things. And could talk. I could probably repeat the seminar, which I'm not going to do. But some of the themes that I'd like to close my remarks with is what we heard today, and which I also very much agree with, is to have a successful project, you need knowledgeable people that are trained and experienced in what they are doing. You need fair and balanced contracts that need to be carefully reviewed. They have to comply, of course, with local law, and that's very important. But the golden principles are very important as well, because you can really foul up a contract by moving risk around willy-nilly. We heard some examples of that. And then there's the element of the soft skills, if you will, which is sort of a difficult word because it implies easy, and they're not easy. But I like to look at that concept of the soft skills as building trust. And The final point I'd make on that is the theme of continuity, like who should be the construction manager and that kind of thing. In the Red Book, I think clearly it should be the engineer. And in my personal viewpoint, the more you can keep the same engineer involved in the project from the report phase all the way through to construction, the better off you are. And that implies certainly that you're satisfied with their performance, but it has a lot of advantages and something that I think we ought to think about. So that was sort of my summary, Nelson. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Bill, for that good summary. Let me just start off by saying, for those who are following this program, if you do have young people who are looking to get into the FIDIC world, that is the FIDIC Future Leaders Management Certificate Program, which is about to start, and you should encourage your staff and your junior one to enroll on that program. I think they will find it very fascinating. Today's topic is quite interesting because it's looking about what are the skill sets and do we have it? And what are the challenges faced by a contract manager? Stephane, I want to start by saying massive thank you for initiating this particular topic because it's quite relevant. The way you structure it, you start to look at it by, do we have the skill set? And what are the challenges faced on the ground? And where do we need to enhance? That's the whole essence of it. Three key topics you raised, you see. Does people have the skill set in the region? Do they actually have, the challenges, and do they understand the challenges, and are they vary in different parts of the world, which is quite clear from the speakers? And then how do we enhance that? And all of that is wrapped around the whole idea of this, FIDIC certifying, contract manager. I think it was well put together. It may be confusing for those who are not contract related, but I can follow it. And as an engineer, I do understand exactly where you're coming from. You didn't only pose those questions, as Bill really touched on it, but you actually look at the project life cycle from the point of view of procurement, the project management, and closing out the account, which is the dispute resolution. It would have been nice if one is closing the account and there's no dispute. That would be fantastic. But maybe if the DAAB, which is in the 2017, is adopted, then by the time the project is finished, there will be no dispute. So the message I can put to the thing, I probably want to say a lot is being said, and Bill's summary is very much touchy. Yes, the soft skill is not soft, but actually they're very challenging because you may be technically savvy, you may be commercially savvy, but if you don't understand how to deal with people, how to manage people, how to negotiate, how to overcome difficulties, then this becomes difficult, real difficult by itself. So from that point of view, what I see is not just pure engineering knowledge only. That's taken for granted that we need to have it. Yes, the legal issue, we need to have it. Understanding jurisdiction is absolutely important. Knowing how to use the FIDIC contract, which one do you use, when do you use it, and how do you apply it is equally important. It was interesting. That question was put, when do you use PPP, or which one do you use for PPP? And the panel absolutely right. If you use the current FIDIC contract in the PPP project, you have to do major amendment. So that's why we are looking to develop a new suit. But I think from my point of view and from what I can see, this seems to be a very, very relevant subject that we need to keep on working on. And I'm so grateful that Stephane, as the chair of the capacity building, you've picked this subject up and you've driven it forward, and it's very, very, very well received. So I want to use this opportunity to thank all our panelists. We'll start by talking about Chum, Humi, and also to talk about Axel and also Pierre for joining. And it's been great to have you to contribute to this conversation. Pierre, sorry we had to wake you up very early, and some of you are in different time zone, but I want to say thank you to all of you, massive speakers, for your contribution, and particular thank you to Bill as well. He hasn't missed any of these webinars so far. I don't know. I really don't know how he does it. I think I haven't got that much hair in my hair, but I haven't got any gray hair in my hair. He's got so much gray hair. He gets up early in the morning and he's very much switch on it. So Bill, thank you very much for your time. But finally, I want to say thank you to all my team within FIDIC who are behind the scene. Barbara, Chanel, Andy, and everybody else, Nadia, and everybody behind the scene, either in getting the registration on, making sure the panelists are here, and making sure that at least we give our members and the industry what it is that they need at this particular time, which I think is very, very relevant. So I'm ever so grateful for the contribution of everybody. On this note, I want to say thank you to everybody, those participants from different parts of the world, 117 countries around the world, for joining us during this 1.5 hours. Thank you very much for your time. I hope, wherever you are keeping safe. And until we meet again, thank you very much. God bless. That's the end of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.